So this is the full extraordinary story of how Dude 44, how a wounded US Air Force weapons system officer radioed "God is good" and was rescued in one of the most daring special operations missions in modern history. US Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt tweeted "God is good." Secretary of War or Defense Secretary Peter Hegseth tweeted also "God is good." Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear is not just a rescue story. It is a story of courage under fire, split-second decisions at the highest levels of the US government, and special operators who risked everything and even deliberately destroyed over $200 million in American aircraft to bring one of their own home. This is the complete minute-by-minute account of the US Air Force Weapons System Officer, known by the call sign Dude 44. Let's start with the shoot down. 200 miles inside Iran, an American F-15 Eagle is flying a combat mission when it is suddenly struck by a shoulder-fired Iranian missile. The aircraft is deep, 200 miles inside Iranian territory. Both crew members eject. The pilot and the weapons system officer land miles apart in rugged, mountainous terrain. The WSO is wounded, but he's not done fighting. He begins a desperate climb up in a 7,000-foot mountain ridge. Every step is agony. When he can go no higher, he wedges himself into a narrow rock crevice, a natural hiding spot that will be almost impossible for searchers to spot from the air or ground. Then, with Iranian forces already swarming the area, he keys his radio. 3 words crackle across the emergency frequency: "God is good." That short transmission would change everything. Washington's first reaction when they got the "God is good" radio message from the WSO: this could be a trap. Back in Washington, officials received the signal but immediately suspected the worst. The message sounded almost too perfect, like something an Iranian captor might force an American to say to lure rescue forces into an ambush. Some even noted that the phrase "God is good" or the similar "power belongs to God" that Trump later referenced could have been scripted by Iranian intelligence to sound like a Muslim fighter's words. Senior leaders hesitated. They had tracking signals showing the WSO was still alive and moving, but a later radio message raised red flags that Tehran might be sending misleading signals. The Pentagon and White House were not going to risk American lives on a possible Iranian trap. Meanwhile, the WSO could hear the hunters closing in. The Iranian manhunt, 48 hours of hell. For the next 48 hours, thousands of Iranian forces hunted Dude 44. IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps units, Basij militias, regular Iranian military, civilian volunteers, helicopters, and drones overhead. A provincial governor publicly offering bounties for anyone who captured the American airman. The WSO stayed silent after the first transmission. He remained hidden in his rock crevice, wounded, listening to the sound of boots, rotors, and voices getting closer and closer. President Trump later described it bluntly: thousands of these savages were hunting him. Even civilians were looking for him, and rewards were offered for anyone who could capture him. Now, the rescue operation. Phase 1 was bold, daylight, and bloody. U.S. Special Operations Command launched an immediate rescue. Around 200 elite special operators were committed to the mission. The first attempt was daring, carried out in a broad daylight under heavy Iranian fire. 2 U.S. helicopters came under intense ground fire, were hit, and had to make emergency landings in Kuwait with wounded crew members on board. At the same time, 2 MC-130J Commando 2 aircraft managed to land at a remote, disused agricultural airstrip deep inside Iran to establish a temporary forward base. But the soft sand trapped the heavy transport planes. They were now sitting ducks. Commanders made an extraordinary call. They flew in 3 smaller replacement aircraft, extracted every American on the ground, and then deliberately destroyed the 2 stranded MC-130Js and other equipment on the spot, rather than let them fall into Iranian hands. Now, a creative masterstroke: MC-130S, Little Birds, and a death strip gamble. With the first attempt partially failed and Iran now fully alerted, a second long-range helicopter insertion was deemed too risky. So US special operators improvised one of the most audacious rescue plans in modern history. Two MC-130s flew into that same remote death airstrip inside Iran, this time carrying disassembled AH-6 Little Bird helicopters from the legendary 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. Special forces immediately secured the perimeter. On the ground, in minutes, the crews assembled the Little Birds right there on the death strip. The tiny, agile Little Birds then lifted off for a short, low-level hop to the exact mountain ridge where the WSO was hiding. They found him exactly where US tracking technology had pinpointed him. Still alive, still wedged in that rock crevice after more than 24 hours. Some reports say nearly 48 hours of evasion. The Little Birds picked up the wounded WSO and raced him back to the makeshift airstrip. Then the final twist: we are not leaving any aircraft behind. Now came the most desperate moment of the entire operation. The heavy MC-130s were once again stuck in the soft sand. There was no time to disassemble the Little Birds under threat of incoming Iranian forces. Commanders made the call. Lighter C-29W aircraft were rushed in to extract every last American. The special operators, the airmen, and the crews. Once everyone was safely aboard the new planes and airborne, they blew up the two stranded MC-130s and the Little Birds on the ground. Over 200 million in US aircraft was deliberately destroyed to prevent them from becoming Iranian propaganda trophies. Throughout the operation, 4 B-1 bombers dropped nearly 102,000 bombs. MQ-9 Reaper drones provided close air support, striking Iranian fighters who got within kilometers of the WSO's position. The CIA ran a sophisticated deception campaign, spreading false intelligence inside Iran that the American airman had already been rescued and was being moved out overland in a ground convoy, buying precious time. Israel provided limited but critical assistance, general intelligence on the ground situation, and one Israel Air Force strike to keep Iranian forces from reaching the area. Then, the West that confirmed he was real. When the WSO was finally safe, those who knew him confirmed what the Pentagon had hoped. He is deeply a religious man. Saying God is good after ejecting was completely in character of him. What sounded suspicious at first was simply a man of faith in his darkest hour. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth later echoed the same three words on X, formerly Twitter: God is good. President Trump, when confirming the pilot's identity to Secretary Hegseth, gave a simple order: we have to get him. And they did. The crew members who had ejected several miles apart were both recovered. The WSO, who radioed those three historic words, was brought home alive. These were special operations at its absolute limit: creative, desperate, and successful against overwhelming odds. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the full story of Dude 44, the WSO who said God is good, and the 200 American warriors who moved heaven and earth and even sacrificed $200 million in aircraft to bring him home. God is good indeed. So I think that's the word we can use after this Easter celebration. God is good, and God was good to the WSO, to American airmen, to everyone on ground. No soldier died, no airman died. God is good to America, and God is good to all of us.